Being that it's September 12th, 2016, at 6:30 p.m., we'll call the Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. You all can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is the Polish American Citizens Club liquor license violation public hearing. I am going to recuse myself on this as I have a interested party that works for me that is involved. So I will not be partaking in this. I will turn it over to Vice Chairman Mr. Becker.
Mr. Chairman, also I'd like to recuse myself on the same grounds as I have in the past, any possible conflicts of interest according to the Mass State Board of Ethics.
Thank you. And we're just going to wait until Chairman and Mr. Miller exit the room. So as Chairman Bork mentioned, we have a public hearing for a liquor license violation hearing for Polish American Citizens Club. So I'd like to do, it is a public hearing, so we're going to have the Webster Police Department representatives come forth, then have members of the PACC come forth, provide information. This will be then open up to comments or questions from the public and from the selectmen that are here. So I guess we'll start off with Webster Police Department.
Good evening. Lieutenant Michael Shaw for the Police Department. I have Sergeant Gordon Wentworth with me as well. Sergeant Wentworth did the investigation into this, so I'll go over a brief synopsis, presentation of the facts, and then he can explain in detail any questions the board might have of him and be on hand to answer questions regarding his report. On June 26th, shortly after midnight, there was a motor vehicle crash, I believe in 17 Westview Drive, car into a house. Very serious accident. Young man, the driver was transported to UMass with very serious leg injury. He was also subsequently, as a result of that investigation, the officers did on scene charged with OUI, liquor, and negligent operation, and some other motor vehicle charges and destruction of property. On June 28th and then again on June 30th, I became aware of information from officers and that it had, from information they received from both people at the scene as well as some social media posts, that the driver had been leaving the PACC and following the bartender home. The bartender lived up the street from where the accident happened. An investigation was then launched, which resulted in Sergeant Wentworth's report, which I believe the board has. And in this report, the following violations and observations were noted. The officers on scene did note a strong odor of alcoholic beverages at the time of the crash coming from the driver. The bartender, Sarah Lamont, who lives up the street from where the crash happened, puts the driver at the PACC. She admitted to serving him approximately 7 beers and claims another bartender served him an additional beers and at least 2 shots of hard alcohol. The driver, Matthew Dupras, was in the parking lot of the PACC when Miss Lamont and her friend, Jacob Merritt, I guess at one point, or I don't know if he still is associated with the board on the PACC, left. They went straight home. Mr. Dupras followed her, and that crash happened approximately 4 to 5 minutes after they got home. So we presume that he left about a few minutes after them and followed her home and then crashed into the house on Westview Drive. Police, fire, EMS arrived. Dupras was brought to UMass. Again, I repeated he was subsequently summoned in the court for OUI, negligent operation, and the other violations. Struck a house to the point where it was deemed uninhabitable, structurally unsound by code enforcement, and to this day, I believe that the family still is not able to reside inside. Probable cause was found on those charges, and a criminal case is currently pending in Dudley District Court. It is our belief that he was overserved at the PACC, which contributed to the motor vehicle crash on Westview. It was during the course of this investigation that it was learned that the bartender, Sarah Lamont, was not tip certified until July 14th, which is approximately 3 weeks after the crash occurred. I will bring to the board's attention that on June 13th, in a previous meeting, the Board of Selectmen were told that all bartenders hired by PACC are tip certified. There were also some discrepancies found in the logbook for non-members to sign in. Basically, they weren't using, it appeared they weren't using their legal names. They were nicknames or street names. It was very hard to follow. It also appears that when there's a public event, the staff that Sergeant Wentworth talked to felt that the public didn't need to sign in to the logbook. We also did discover that during the course there were minors in the bar, several 18-year-olds and a 17-year-old juvenile. However, there is no evidence that they were served any alcohol. And that's kind of the brief overview of what I have. Quick summary. If the board has any questions, happy to entertain them.
Open up to any questions from the board? The only question that I have is there a blood alcohol level known or derived somewhere?
The courthouse is in receipt of the medical records, and they have that information. I don't believe it's been made public yet, but I'm very confident in our criminal case. Fair enough.
Any other questions? Thank you, Lieutenant.
Anything to add?
Sergeant Wentworth, do you have anything else to add, or
No, I don't. That's pretty much it.
are there members from the PACC who would like to come up and talk about this?
Thank you for the opportunity to be heard. My name is Gary Bridgman. I'm representing PACC with respect to this alleged violation. Give me 1 minute to organize my notes here. First, as you know, the board is empowered under Statute 138, Sections 23 and 64. You, the board, have the burden to prove that there was a violation of the license. So taking what appears to be the most serious accusation first, the question is, was Matthew DePross overserved? And to address that first question, you've got to answer the legal question. What is the legal standard of overservice? When does a bartender have the duty to cut off a patron? And that's a very important standard, because you are not a Board of Selectmen at this point. You are a local liquor authority board, and your job is to judge the facts in light of the law, or judge the law in light of the facts. So, what's the duty that the bartender has as to when to cut off a patron? And let's look to the courts first. The most important case, meaning it's the most widely cited and the most widely upheld, is Shimino versus Milford Keg. And it sets out 3 criteria. First, was Mr. DePross intoxicated on the premises? Second, did the person serving him know he was intoxicated? And then third, after the person knew he was intoxicated, did that person, the bartender, continue to serve him? Those are the 3 elements of this matter. So, I've reviewed the police report. Question is, was he intoxicated on the premises? Did the employee serving him know it? And then did she serve? I've read carefully the police report. I'll go through the witnesses list one by one. The bartender, Ms. Lamont, indicated in the police report that she knew Mr. DePross, was familiar with him, knew his limits, and he seemed fine. That's a quote. Mr. Merritt, a PACC board member and patron in the night in question, he says, probably right, at his limit or possibly over. Implication being that after having served him the last drinks, he was close to the limit that Mr. Merritt believed he should stop drinking. Now, the next logical question for the police officer to ask is, what do you mean by at his limit? That question was not asked or answered. Third witness, Ms. LaBouffe, speaking on behalf of her minor son. Now, I'm not really quite sure what she said, but regardless, a lot of hearsay, She said that my son said that Mr. Dupross said. So she was a witness, but she didn't seem to give any firsthand account of the level of intoxication as perceived by a third party. There was an interview with J1, who was a minor, initial J1 rather than use his name. There was an interview with J1, a minor who was at the bar, not drinking. There's no implication that he was drinking or served. He made the statement that Dupross told the mother that Dupross was over the limit during the crash. But that's not the standard. The standard is, what does the bartender see? Somebody's standing at your bar. I'll have a beer. What do you see? Do you see him slurring his speech? Do you see some oddities about the eyes, the way he's behaving? Does he bump into things? What does the bartender see? What do the third parties see? It's irrelevant what Dupross, the person being served, thought. Ms. Fredette, a bartender with years of experience who was interviewed, had no observations whatsoever to the degree of intoxication by Mr. Dupross. There was an interview with Justin Fedler. He observed Mr. Dupross being served beer. He makes no indication, no observation in the police report about demeanor or level of intoxication. I understand from the police report there was a U.S. Postal employee at the bar, and I understand that Ms. Fredette gave the police officer the letter carrier's telephone number. I also understand that the police did not contact this letter carrier. I did. I asked him, I spoke to him, I said, did he drink too much? And he said, no, he didn't drink too much. I said, would you state that in an affidavit if I asked you to? He indicated yes, he would. I believe the police have his number, as do I, and I can give that to them if they wish. So, summarizing the police report from the perspective of the witnesses who are looking at the person sitting at the bar ordering beer, was he intoxicated? No one says yes. No one. So, next you say, well, yeah, he drank 7 beers. He must have been drunk. He had to have been drunk. But consider this statement. There's a case, it's Rivera versus Club Caravan. And let me just back up and let me give you some facts. In this case, it's a 1993 case. A guy leaves the bar. He had a lot to drink. He goes out of the bar, he gets in a car, and he drives into a police cruiser. Yeah, I guess irony is the right word. So the court says, and this is a quote, given a horrific accident, and given that recently departed patrons caused that accident, and given that they failed sobriety test at the scene, it's tempting to reason backwards to the conclusion that they must have been intoxicated. However, as the ABCC and the courts recognized, evidence of apparent intoxication or elevated blood alcohol levels at some later point in time do not show that the person was in fact intoxicated at the time the last drink was served. Another example, this is Kirby v. Le Disco, 1993. Similar finding, there was no evidence the person was visibly intoxicated, although evidence clearly shows he was served 8 beers. So in summary of the witness report on the police report, the board has produced 0 evidence that Mr. Dupross exhibited signs of intoxication. But there's more. There's always more. And this one's tough for me because this is a forum of a judicial finding of facts and law. But there's no rules of procedure. I'd like to ask Officer Wentworth a few questions, and I guess I need the permission of this board and also the permission of Mrs. Wentworth to proceed with that, if I may.
If you're done providing your other work, your other information.
I am with respect to the over-serving issue, yes.
Please. Sergeant Wentworth.
And please, if you don't mind, please.
Yeah, we'll have to share the microphone just and if you can speak a little louder just so people in the audience can hear as well. Thank you.
So the questions really are regarding blood alcohol level at the time of the accident and prior to. So do you know what blood alcohol level Mr. Dupross had at the time of the accident?
No,
I'm sorry, Mr. Bridger, would you mind just sitting down, please? This isn't a court of law. I'd just ask you to sit down.
Well, I
please.
thought better I stand.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you conduct a field sobriety test or a breathalyzer test?
no, sir, I was not present on scene. It had nothing to do with that portion of the investigation.
Okay. Now, it's my understanding that the complaining officer must be on premises, according to your bylaws, must be at this hearing. Who is the complaining officer in this case? Is it Mr. Wentworth or is it someone else in the police department?
In terms of the liquor law violation or
Yes.
the criminal case?
The liquor law
The
violation.
liquor law violation, I would be the complaining officer.
Okay. So you You did not conduct the field test because you were not there on scene?
Correct.
Okay. Are you familiar with the factors that affect blood alcohol level?
In terms of,
Well, just for example, would you agree with me that body weight, heavier people can drink more than light people?
sure,
Okay. Gender, men can drink more than women.
I don't know that that's been scientifically proven, but sure,
Okay. Number of drinks, more drinks affect, they raise the blood alcohol level, true?
naturally.
Time. The more time passes, the less alcohol in the body because of liver metabolism.
Sure.
Okay. So, do you know how many drinks Mr. Dupree consumed during the night in question?
According to the bartender that I interviewed, he had at least 7 beers plus additional beers plus 2 shots.
Okay. Do you know the weight of Mr. Dupross?
No idea.
Just for the information here, the arraignment indicates that he was 5'11" and weighed 220 pounds. Can you tell me the blood alcohol level which is considered to be illegal for purposes of operating a motor vehicle?
Sure, anything in excess of 0.05.
Can you tell me the blood alcohol level at which point a person becomes too intoxicated to be served another drink?
I can't tell you that.
And me neither, and no one can tell you that, and which is why the standard exists, which is how is the person behaving? Because no magic reading, at least from my research, can tell you when a person is too drunk to be served another. Are you aware that Mr. Dupross may have had brake troubles with his automobile?
That was reported to me during my investigation, yes.
Are you aware that he may have been upset and jealous because Jake Merritt, the person at the bar, left the bar with the bartender with whom Mr. Dupross was flirting?
That was speculative during my investigation, yes.
Are you aware that the accident happened seconds after Mr. Dupross passed the house where Mr. Merritt and the bartender were parked outside?
Yes, I am.
So, is it possible that Mr. Dupross, drunk or sober, saw the bartender in another guy's car parked in front of the house, floored it, lost control of the vehicle, not fueled on alcohol but 23-year-old testosterone, and drove into a house? Is that possible?
It's possible, but you'll note in my report that the majority of people that I spoke with also informed me that they felt that alcohol was a contributing factor to the crash.
Okay. But apparently it wasn't based upon their observations, because in your report, no one observed that during the process of drinking did he appear intoxicated.
I would have to review my report, but I believe that you're correct.
Okay. Last question. Is there any evidence or implication that he smoked pot or did other drugs that day?
There's no evidence.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Now, with respect to what I will call the secondary issues, because this certainly over-serving is a violation of the license, no question. Now, there's been the implication that there was no TIPS certification, and there's some implication that the logbook wasn't maintained. So let me take the TIPS certification first. There were bartenders, too, working on June 25th. Ms. Lamont had been recently hired, and she obtained her TIPS certification on July 14th. Ms. Fredette had a TIPS certification in 2013 at her prior employer. The certification follows the person, not the establishment. So she had it in 2013 from her employment at Oxford Tavern. However, Oxford Tavern closed, and she cannot get the lady who has the paperwork to find her TIPS certification. We asked her to recertify, and at this point she is certified under TIPS training. I'm in receipt of your policy that you, the board, issued 20 years ago. And it is very short. It says all licensees have until January 1, 1997 to have their employees who are involved in the service of alcohol trained by completing a course or workshop such as TIPS program offered by Campbell Trent. Now, what I don't see are the ramifications if an employee is not certified on a particular night. And I I'd like to advance the idea that if you are going to consider someone in violation of the policy should also have a particular action as a result. If this said you must have tip certified employees, they must be certified on their first day of service, or their 5th day of service, or their first year of service. Because back in 1997, you gave them 1 year to get certified. Now, does that mean Ms. Lamont had a week, a day, no time at all? Does that mean she had to pay for a tip certification even though she didn't have the job? I don't know. The policy has been issued in 1995 and has been ignored since then. There's been no action that I have seen that I've been able to locate by the town of Webster Selectmen, by any board, with respect to this policy until tonight. Ms. Lamont started work in June. She received her certificate in July. In my opinion, this policy is an I gotcha law, vague enough to be enforceable only when you want to enforce it. Yes.
As far as a tip certification, I believe this is the only case that we've actually had in probably 15 years. As far as a tip certified applicant.
I don't know about the
being
15 years,
certified.
but I believe it is, yes.
So,
I've reviewed the minutes of the board, I've reviewed the decisions of the ABC, and there's not a single instance where the absence of a tip certification by an employee in any town in the Commonwealth is considered a liquor violation. And I finally figured out how to search those decisions, and I've located 0.
what's the purpose of a tip certification?
Tip certification is to train the person how to recognize the situation where you are over-serving.
Do you know, sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Could it be possible that this person was impaired after 7 drinks?
It's certainly possible, but observations don't show that. No witness shows that, none, 0. Statements to the contrary in the police report.
Just, does the ABCC rules and regulations, when they're looking at that, do they require a bartender to be tip certified when they're working for the first time?
They do not. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts has no statute on the books, none. No state statute requiring tip certification. It's only the town of Webster in its 1995 ordinance where tip certification is required.
Would it make sense to have someone tip certified if they become a bartender?
It would make sense. It would also make sense that if you are going to require it, that the statute be specific as to when they must be certified. Because if someone knocks on the door and says, I'd like a job as a bartender, and you say, okay, go get tip certified. Well, they say, wait, I don't have the job yet. This tip certification costs a few $100, and they don't know they have the job. So if you bring them in and you train them, as we did, under an experienced bartender, that experienced bartender can say, listen, if somebody comes up here and they're slurring their speech, if they're bumping into people, you cut them off. And here's how you do it. You offer them a cup of coffee. You wait on them. You ignore them. They say, hey, I'll have a beer. And you'll say, yep, I'll get to that. You know, the experience of the bartender teaches them that, so does the tip certification. The two together creates a situation where a safer atmosphere exists.
Wouldn't the tips training specialize in identifying that?
I totally agree, yes.
And the person who, Ms. Lamont, did not have tip certification?
She didn't have tip
At the time of the
certification.
incident?
At the time of the incident, she did not. I've stated that, yes. That's
And-
correct.
In the 1997, I believe you were referring to, that was the year the state adopted tips requirements?
No, the state has not
Or the
adopted.
town adopted it?
This is the town of Webster. The town of Webster bylaw. It says all licensees shall have employees trained under the tips program. Since then, I'm aware of no enforcement program, no log, no follow-up at all to see if, in fact, the restaurants and pubs and bars of this town are, in fact, complying with this.
Do you know if that was in conjunction with the state suggesting at all to towns and cities that they pass some kind of tip certification within their towns and cities? That date being 1997. I'm just curious why 1997?
I'm aware of no coordination with the state. I know the state does not have such certification requirements, but I'm not aware of anything that gave rise to that now.
Just as a liquor license, every year we require a list of the tip certified trained bartenders when they renew their license every year. We require them to give us a list. Also, Trent Campbell, they also send us a list of every time they have a class, they send the towns who have been certified and where they work. So we received all that information. we do require it every year.
And I think that's useful as a follow-up, because this policy does state that, as the cover memo, it says, any business that does not comply will not be issued a liquor license for the next year. So what does that mean for new employees? Do they have to get their tip certification immediately? As again, the policy doesn't say, do you have a week, do you have a day, do you have an hour, do you have 2 weeks, do you have a month? What do you have? There's no indication. You have to have certification of all employees, and we do. But how long does it take after they're hired? What's the rule? I know of no rule. So that's the vagueness of this policy that I say it's an I gotcha law. Okay, somebody started on the 1st, there's an incident on the 2nd, they didn't tip certify until the 3rd. Okay, I got you. You weren't tip certified on that night, therefore it's a liquor violation. ABCC has not taken that position.
Yeah, I think one of the big questions that I have is, you stated, what is the duty of a bartender to when a patron should be cut off? You stated, are they intoxicated on the premises? How intoxicated? And then are they served after knowingly being intoxicated? And then how does a bartender know all this? You either get it through experience or you get it through tips. So through experience wouldn't seem to be a good idea. That's probably why the state set up the tips program, so that bartenders could better identify when someone is intoxicated. So what's concerning here is when you have someone who is not tip certified acting as the bartender. And I just want to find out, you mentioned Ms. Fredette was there, but I think in the Ms. Fredette,
Yep.
I believe you said that she was there, kind of implying that she was working. I believe the police report said she was not working, that Ms. Lamont was the bartender that was working. I don't know if, is that correct?
There's conflicting statements both in the police report and from Ms. Fredette and from Ms. Lamont as to the situation there. I know for a fact that Ms. Lamont was working. I know for a fact that Ms. Fredette was working from noon to 6. After 6, it's my understanding from Ms. Lamont that Ms. Fredette was also there. I don't know. I don't know who's telling the truth with respect to that statement. But it's my understanding, up to that date, Ms. Fredette was training Ms. Lamont. On that date, I cannot say that Ms. Fredette was or was not there.
Was it known, I think in the police report, was Ms. Fredette's time card stamped out at 6 o'clock?
It was not.
We never received time card. We haven't received one.
Or was it identified by the PACC that the Ms. Fredette was stamped out or paid through 6 o'clock? That she was a patron after 6 o'clock?
I don't have that information from the PACC. I have that information directly from Ms. Fredette.
Okay.
Ms. Fredette said that she clocked out at 6 p.m. and she remained on the patron side of the bar for a period.
Yeah, I'm just, because that's been reported in the police report, so I'm trying to clarify.
We did not have a stamped out time card for Ms. Fredette for that date. Now, the last one is the logbook. And the logbook is, it's mentioned a number of times in the report. And a number have, I believe the officer indicated that it was, names were written in and it was vague as to who they were, their street address or so forth. And I am aware that Chapter 38 does require that a club maintain a notebook for non-members who are there at the invitation or guest invite. I have looked at the logbook. It's not perfect. There's a page for all the days people have signed in or their names missing. I can't say because I wasn't there, but I do know there is a logbook. I do know we have since then put a large sign saying you must sign in, no exceptions. But can I say that the logbook was deficient? It's possible, but I don't know that. So we resist the question, or we resist the notion that it was deficient. We do have the logbook there on the bar, and the bartenders now insist that everyone, not just non-members, but everyone, sign on to this logbook. And again, I've looked through the ABCC decisions, and I see no decision at the ABCC where the deficiency of a logbook is a liquor violation. And further, I would resist the implication that our logbook is deficient, because I do know that I saw the logbook when I joined the club 2 years ago, and I know it's on the bar there for the patrons to sign. So my conclusion, and we can visit, I'm welcome any questions here. My conclusion on this is Mr. Dupross was not overserved. Or if he was overserved, there certainly is no evidence from any third party that he was exhibiting signs of excessive intoxication, sufficient to cut him off. It's your burden to prove otherwise, and I don't see any evidence to the fact other than Mr. Wentworth's report, which doesn't have a single witness saying that he was overserved, that he was intoxicated at the time of the incident. The tip certification, I acknowledge that Ms. Lamont was not tip certified on the 25th of June. She was, however, working with an experienced bartender who was, at least up until 6. Beyond that, I have no basis to form an opinion. And the logbook is not deficient, and it'll even, and I invite scrutiny with respect to that logbook that's been maintained for years. So that is my conclusion.
Questions?
So your contention is non-tip certified is a non-violation as far as the state is concerned? Unenforceable as far as a suspension or?
My contention is there's no state statute that requires tip certification for a bartender. There is a town ordinance that requires it, but my contention on that is it's so vague that it's a suggestion. It's not a statute. It's a policy of the Selectmen adopted November 20th, 1995.
So what you're saying is if we suspended you for your non-tip bartender, you'd go to state and you'd be overturned?
That's what I'm saying, yes.
Do you have anything that would back that up? We've never had a...
We never had a tip problem with someone not being tip certified.
Before we get too far on the tips, does any representative from Webster Police want to come back and provide some more information? Lieutenant Shaw.
Just if I could, I respectfully disagree with the attorney. I do feel that we've met the burden. You have a bartender, Ms. Fredette says she wasn't working, so Ms. Lamont, not tip certified, was working by herself. He was there, Ducross was there for 6 hours, had at least 7 beers, 2 shots from Ms. Lamont. Maybe Ms. Fredette served him another couple of beers, I don't know. But how do we know she had a basis of knowledge of Mr. Ducross's intoxication level if she never had any tips training? This is the same girl in the report that also says you can drink a 30-pack of Bud Light with no problem. I don't care how big you are, or 30-pack of Bud Light's going to make you drunk. Okay. As far as the mailman, he was only identified as Sergeant Wentworth as Steve the mailman. No number was ever provided to us. Ms. Fredette says she was not working. So again, Ms. Lamont was there by herself. And as far as the time frame from when Ducross left the PACC to the crash is about 7 to 8 minutes. And again, probable cause was found by an independent person, a clerk magistrate of the Dudley District Court, reviewed the facts, and found probable cause to exist for the charge to go forward.
So was the clerk magistrate who pressed the charges?
Well, we filed the charges, and he found that there was probable cause for them to go forward. So I feel that that's indicative that he was intoxicated at the time of the accident. And the time frame is so short from when he left the PACC to when the time of the crash happened that we feel that he was overserved at the PACC.
Thank you.
If I could rebut some of that, please. First of all, you throw out the words probable cause and whatever. Let me just make it clear. What you do is you go to the magistrate. The magistrate is the gateway to the court. So the police went to the magistrate. They indicate that he was arrested and there was a strong smell of alcohol.
He's not arrested.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I thought he was arrested.
No, he was summoned.
Okay. The magistrate then takes that information and concludes, based upon those statements, whether there is a possibility or a strong probable cause that he could be convicted of an OUI offense. Right now, bear in mind, we don't know the blood alcohol level. We have no idea. But facts will prove themselves out. So it goes to the court for a hearing on it. Until then, he's innocent, and we don't know the blood alcohol level. Now, I've done the math on, and I encourage any of you to go to a blood alcohol calculator, and there's lots of them online. But if you take a man weighing 220 pounds, drinking 9 drinks in 6 hours, The calculators will show, and I've gone through them, he will have a blood alcohol level just over .08. Now, that's high enough to be illegally operating a motor vehicle, but as Officer Wentworth said, you don't know if he exhibits outwardly the characteristics of someone who is intoxicated. And I've just got to emphasize, that's the threshold, that's the burden. You have to prove that a third party looking at this person says he is too drunk to be served any more alcohol. And there is not one witness in this report that says that.
Well, I know, I haven't done OUIs in a long time, but I know that the threshold, or it was 1 drink an hour is what your body can metabolize. That was a rule of thumb. And we've got at least...
It's approximately 1 every 40 minutes.
11. I was always told an hour, so I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you're finding online. I don't know how...
But that's why I invite, I'll say things most favorable to my facts, but I encourage this.
Reckless operation, which would indicate supporting clause of OUIs.
Do we have a time frame? Did the person attend the bar, then leave, then come back? My understanding, based on what's been presented, is there were several beers, and there were 2 shots, and then there were 7 or 8 beers, 7 beers after. Was there a break in time? Was the person there for the entire 6-hour time frame?
Mr. Dupras, the person.
I'm sorry, Sergeant Wentworth, would you mind just coming up to the, thank you.
The operator of the motor vehicle, the person in question, he did leave according to some of the witnesses, and there was some discrepancy as to whether or not he left once or twice, but it was early in the evening nonetheless. So may I refer to my report real
Please.
quick? I believe that folks told me that he had been back at the PACC somewhere around
Page 2.
page 2.
Number 4.
He returned at around 20 past 8, according to the bartender. So he would have been back there at around 20 past 8, from however many trips that he took in between, whether it was 1 or 2.
So the point I was getting to was, how much liquor was he served between 8:20 and midnight when the club closed?
I don't think
Is
that was
that-
ever established.
okay.
I don't think that we could conclusively say, at what times what liquors were served.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the members of the board?
Do you know when he'll go to trial? When's this gonna go to trial?
I don't know when the next trial date is.
October 17th,
Is that when this is going to trial?
pre-trial.
Okay.
Before we get to the public comments or questions, if they have anything else, I guess, from the Webster Police Department, or if not, from Attorney Bridgman?
The question that you asked of the officer about the time period, in the report, there's a statement from one of the bartenders that he arrived at the beginning of the shift of Miss Lamont, which would put him there at 6. And I don't know where that is. And then he left as they were closing, which was close to midnight. So it's a 6-hour period of time, which was interrupted by him leaving and returning, driving to Millbury or something like that.
Correct.
So it was a period of time of 6 hours. And the most definitive thing I can see in here is the number of beers and shots that he consumed over that 6-hour period. And that's where I reached the point of view that it was a likely blood alcohol level of close to .08. And at .08, you're not, according to the various charts, you're not obviously impaired for purposes of someone looking at you to determine if you are drunk or not.
Under the tip certification, would you know, does it take a bartender to think, okay, they're at .08, I'll give them one more, or they're at .05, I'll give them one more, so they can get up to .08? And I'm not familiar with the tip certification process.
Well, the tip certification process is not, and I've been through it, it's not with respect to the numbers. The numbers are part of the education, but the issue is when you have a patron who's coming up, how do you serve him? And if somebody's coming up for for 8 shots or 9 shots or 10 Black Russians or something like that, you should know, regardless of how he behaves, that he is too drunk to be served. Short of that, you look for the signs: talking a lot, behaving erratically, bumping into things, slurring his speech. That leads you to believe he is intoxicated, which gives you the heads up to stop serving him.
And these would all be things that you would learn in tip certification?
Or from an experienced bartender who has been tip certified.
And is there indication, I guess, anywhere in here that part of the PACC policies and procedures is that one bartender trains another in tips type of looking at a person, what to look for, or is that generally left to the tips program?
I cannot point to any specific written policy, no.
If you gentlemen are done, we, at this point, would open it up to questions, comments from the public. Are there any? I see someone raising their hand back there. Hi. If you would please come up and identify yourself. Thank you.
My name is Angela Fleming.
I'll have you have a seat. Thank you.
Hi. I was just wondering, most insurances for bars actually put the tip certification in their insurance. I was just wondering if the PACC maybe had that. Usually your bartender has to be tip certified so they know when to and not overserve someone when they're
So the
drinking.
question is, in an insurance application?
If they would have insurance on their bar, then you would know whether or not their insurance clause says that the person has to be tip certified.
Attorney Bridgman?
I'm aware of the question, which is asked by any carrier when you're filling out an application. You know, do you require tip certification? The answer is yes. But as far as the time frame, which is the important question, you know, are your employees tip certified? Yes. No one ever says, are they tip certified on the first day of business? Because, and that's the issue here. Ms. Lamont is tip certified. She wasn't tip certified on June 26th.
I'm sorry, when was Ms. Lamont hired?
In June, but I don't have the precise date. I can get that for you. But she had worked for approximately 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Do we have any other questions from the audience, comments from the audience? If not, no other, I'm sorry, but you'll have to come up, please, and just state your name. Thank you.
My name is Donna Morgan, and the kid hit my house, okay? I do believe that when they had tip certification required, it was to prevent things. And if you do not have the training to prevent it, you are not qualified to take the job. How can you say, I want to be an engineer, you go and you apply for the engineer's job, and they say, well, do you have an engineering degree? No. I'll get that once you tell me I have the job. It doesn't work like that. You have to be qualified to do the job. And I too am aware that insurance companies do require tip certification to have you, to insure you as well. So that said, they would be in violation of the insurance, and I'm not sure they would be able to serve the alcohol at that point in time.
Or at least and have insurance.
I'm sorry?
At least and have insurance.
Right. I don't know if that would be something that the board requires, that they have insurance to operate a business in town.
Well, I
I'm
think
sure they go
I
hand
do
in hand.
believe everything is either joint underwriting liquor liability association, or there is a liquor liability policy required of every entity that has a license.
Mhm.
Yes.
And like I say, the person hit my house. There were many people at my house that night. And we could hear people everywhere. Now, I can't tell you who, because to be honest, I was in shock going, I can't believe this just happened. It was like a bomb hit my house, okay? There were many people out there that I heard that kept saying, well, there's a girl up there that's saying he was drunk. So she obviously knew. I did not speak to her. I don't know who it was, but I know this is what they're telling me. Everyone that opened that car to get there for that kid kept telling me it smells awful in there. And if there was 8 minutes between the PACC and my house, he was definitely overserved there. I have been told, I believe it was by his mother, that she believes he passed out. So that means you are overserved. You don't just pass out on your way home if you've been drinking at a bar for X amount of time. So-
Thank you. Appreciate your coming up.
All right, thanks.
Attorney Bridgman, I don't know if you wanted, okay, thank you. Do we have any other individuals from the public that would like to talk? Yes, sir.
My name is Chris Everett. I did study in high school and after high school blood alcohol levels. I know personally me, I'm approximately 170, 5'4", 5'5". After 3 drinks, I know myself I can't drive. So a bartender being able to tell whether you're overserved or not, I don't act like an idiot in a bar after 3 drinks, but I also shouldn't drive home. So I don't know, as far as the violation would go for them, on how a bartender could tell that when different people act differently under the influence of alcohol.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments? Anything from the board? Okay, if not, we're going to consider this hearing closed at this point.
Just, one bit of information. Maybe Courtney can get some information on the TIPS program through the state, so we'll have that.
And I'd ask the board if they would like to take any action at this point. And
My
I'll do-
recommendation would be to continue it until we know what happens at the trial, see what happens. And get a blood alcohol, take it from there. Because right now, we can assume he was intoxicated, but there's no proof.
With regards to violations of policy, there's a concern of over-serving, and there's also a concern of serving and not tip certified, is that, I think that's what I get out of this. And then I also have a question of how much time do we have with regards to making our decision under the liquor liability hearings?
My recommendation on the tips and the logbook, I'd give them a verbal warning on those two. They seem to have gotten everything on as far as the tips in the book. The main problem would be the alcohol.
We're in discussion, Mr. Jolda.
Yeah, I would agree with Selectman Dugevich's recommendation to continue until we are able to get the outcome of the trial and determine the blood alcohol content, since that would be a deciding factor.
So at this point, we're looking to continue, and then the question is, with regards to the rights of the PACC, if we continue, does that do anything with regards to
That's what I want.
timing with ABCC?
That's what I just wanted to make sure that his side would agree to the continuation, because I remember we had the last violation, it was delayed, so on his end, would he agree to continuing it?
I have, yeah, let me just comment on that. The
If you
issue on the
could,
last
I'm sorry, Attorney Bridgman, thank you.
The issue on the last one was that there was a violation, alleged violation on April 14th. Then there was an election. Then there was a hearing. And despite what you might say about having consulted with the ABCC with respect about the timing of that particular hearing, that was not the issue. We consulted with the ABCC with respect to a change of manager application. The timing of the hearing was not within your bylaw because you waited. No excuse. There was no excuse. The bylaw says you shall have it within a certain amount of time.
Well, Mr.
And
Bridgman,
you
if we can stick to
and
this
that's irrelevant.
particular
You're
hearing.
right.
thank
Now,
you.
relevant to this hearing, I think a continuance is in perfect order. I think you have acted within your time frame, and I would stipulate to a continuance, and I would agree not to protest that particular continuance because I think the facts are still out there to be
And you would
found.
stipulate that on behalf of the
I would.
PACC?
I would.
Thank you. The questions that I would have deal with the tip certification process, the fact that someone is serving as not tip certified. By the admission of, I think, Attorney Bridgman, it would be difficult for someone to know if someone's intoxicated if they have not had tip certification. So I personally am reluctant to continue, but if we're done discussion, we can leave it to a vote.
So
Your
looking
motions.
for a motion?
Please.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to continue the hearing until we get the final disposition of the case with the blood alcohol content.
We need that. Second.
Any other discussion? Do we have a preliminary hearing date set for?
That's the pretrial. Yeah, that's the only thing docketed so far is an October 17th pretrial.
So we may not know at that point what the blood alcohol level is. We probably won't.
This could take, 6 months.
There is a motion for the court to release, for the court to demand the release of the blood alcohol level. When that'll be heard, I don't know.
I would suggest we put
Yeah,
a date on this so we can bring it back up on our agenda.
Yeah, so I'll amend my original motion to continuing the hearing until we get the blood alcohol content determined from the
Second.
court papers.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I vote no. With that, we can pause for 2 minutes. This item is done, and we'll bring back the chairman and Selectman Miller. Thank you. Are we good to come back? Thank you. So we'll now be back in session for the Selectmen's meeting, and I'm going to turn it back over to Chairman Bork.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda was the Board of Selectmen reorganization, which I had requested to be put on here, and we will be taking off. Next item on the agenda is Charity Wong Kim, appointment to the Cultural Council. Is Charity here? Sure, we'll wait.
She's coming. She's just had her daughter had a bathroom.
No problem.
So everything else is locked up.
All right, so while we're waiting, we can go on to the next item, which the next item was the approval of the new inspectional services fee schedules, and I think we're going to, because of discussion, we're gonna postpone this
Correct.
until our next regular meeting.
Service fees.
Yeah, it's all that line item is postponed until our next regular meeting. All right, we'll go down to, while we're waiting, we'll go down to the acting town administrator's report.
And the acting town administrator has been focusing on town accountant duties, so the acting town administrator does not have a report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Under old business, the part-time recreation director position job description.
So this was provided to the board at your last meeting. So we're just looking if anyone has any amendments to it, additions, any changes. If there are no changes, then we'll go ahead and put an article on the town meeting warrant to fund, and then we will advertise for the position.
Does anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns about the job description?
Mr. Chairman, the only question I had was the approximately 50 part-time and seasonal, who do they report to now?
Well, we do have a part-time seasonal director. That individual is a young person, and this person would take the place of that
Okay,
person,
it would
be
replace-
responsible for, correct, replace that.
That's what I-
That's right.
Sure I understood. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns about the job description? Do you want a motion on accepting this?
Yes, I'd appreciate that, thank you.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to accept the position title Recreation Director, statement of duties and job description. Any other discussion? Courtney, pull the board.
Selectman Miller?
Yes.
Selectman Durgevich?
Yes.
Selectman Jolden?
Yes.
Selectman Becker?
Yes.
Chairman Board?
Yes.
Thank you.
And jumping back for Charity Wong Kim, the appointment to the Cultural Council. Come on down. You're the next contestant. Have a seat. Thank you so much for coming. We just will allow you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then if the board has any questions,
Okay, great. My name is Charity
we
Wonkam.
can move it for you.
Thank you. My name is Charity Wonkam, and I'm a special education teacher in Auburn. And I'm interested in joining the council so I can be a bit more part of our community and start bringing in different ideas, the perspective of someone with a child or children, and my hopes are I'll be appointed.
Questions from the board?
Welcome aboard.
Other than thank you.
Yeah, we certainly appreciate you stepping up, and a motion.
I'll make the motion that we.
Second.
Thank you.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion? Courtney, pull the board.
Selectman Miller?
Yes.
Selectman Durgevich?
Yes.
Selectman Jolden?
Yes.
Selectman Becker?
Yes.
Chairman Board?
Yes. Welcome. And make sure you see Mr. Craver, right?
Correct.
Sometime during the day to get sworn in.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Any other old business? New business?
Chairman, I present a document on new business.
Or what, Mr. Benoit?
That's what the selectmen go over tonight, tomorrow night's meeting.
I'm sorry, it's for what?
The selectmen to review tonight, tomorrow night's meeting.
Oh, sure, we'll take on an advisement.
It's already in there.
Yeah, I guess so.
Thank you. Should make both of us happy, right?
Any other new business? Informational mail. I will entertain a motion.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Could you do have a letter in here of interest to serve on the, one of the, either conservation, zoning, or planning board. May we ask this individual to come into your next meeting?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
That's the one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sarah Honey. Do you need this on the agenda for next meeting as well?
An application for a class 2 license.
We have to get information on that,
You're
right?
gonna get slip on?
That will
You're gonna get information on it. And I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. Any other discussion? Courtney, call the board.
Selectman Miller?
Yes?
Selectman Degevich?
Yes.
Selectman Jordan?
Yes.
Selectman Becker?
Yes.
Chairman Ford?
Yes.
Do we have anything signed?
Says for